Hey everyone, and welcome back to the AI in Action podcast. I'm your host, Adima Zolkal, your product design and AI expert. And today we're diving deep into one of the biggest challenges facing enterprise today. How do you innovate with AI while actually sleeping soundly at night? Our guest is Phillip Swan, co-founder and chief product and go-to-market officer at Iridius, a company that's solving the trust equation in AI. If you ever wondered how enterprise can move fast and stay safe in the AI revolution, this conversation is for you. Let's dive in. Hi, Philip.
Hey, Adi. Nice to meet you.
I'm
Thanks
so
for having me on.
happy that we have this opportunity, and I'm sure it's going to be really interesting. And I told you before that I think that so many companies are struggling today because they know they need it, but they're very reluctant to do that. And that's why we're having this discussion. So let's start. What's the biggest misconception executives have when they say we need AI?
Wow, that's a really good one, because what happens is that people assume that AI is purely about technology rather than governance and accountability. So when you're an executive at an enterprise or any company, you often underestimate the complexity of ensuring the AI aligns both ethically, operationally, and legally within your company. Thinking about the tech alone is not enough without clearly defined guardrails. And it's about the guardrails, which comes down to governance, it comes down to adhering to standards and regulatory. It's a very complex move, but it's a foundation. It's foundational to build trust.
And I'd say that maybe most people would say, okay, it's kind of a more complex, high-level GDPR. What would you say? Like, it's not only that, I guess. So what would you tell them?
Yeah, GDPR is only one component, right? So that gets around to some levels of hiding personally identifying information or PII information and having control over your data about you personally. It goes way beyond that, right? It goes actually into deep reputational risk for an enterprise, right? So what is the risk to their customers? What is the risk to their employees? What's the risk to their brand reputation as a whole? Which really gets into investor relations. And, people this is back to the days in security, when you're looking at, the CISOs getting fired for a breach, right? It's going to be a similar situation here, that we're going to start seeing people getting eviscerated and companies getting eviscerated because of AI that's gone rogue in some capacity, that has created harm, reputational harm, employee harm, or God forbid, customer harm. And it's all of those things combined. So trust is one of those things that is really hard to win, but it's super easy to lose.
Yeah, especially with the customers today nothing is like not seen by them. They always see everything and they will not forget about it usually when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Especially
exactly.
related to security. So how can leaders leverage AI with less risks?
So how they leverage with risk is you start with foundational governance, and it's your data governance.
Oh, I think we're caught up.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can
That was
hear
weird.
you.
That was weird. I lost connectivity. It was very weird.
As I said, we can always delete it. So
All right.
I'll go back to the question.
So the foundation starts with data, right? And it starts with data that data is very noisy. And how do you get your policies around your data use, your transparency, your accountability? You've got to define who oversees the AI outcomes and how within the company. You can't just let it fire and go on its own. You've got to have human in the loop. So it's not about perfecting AI. It's about needing a trusted framework that prepares the company to confidently manage the risks and the rewards. I mean, that's, everybody's is this big shiny ball right now. And how do you find an AI use case that actually works? AI is not, you don't solve everything with AI. In some cases, still working in Excel spreadsheets is actually the better the use case for what you're doing.
Right.
And I switched there to, going into pharma. I mean, in pharma, that is a great example, is like Yes, there's absolute use for AI in pharma, but in many cases, you could still use a spreadsheet, right? You don't need to go down that
Yeah.
and burn millions and millions of dollars on something that it doesn't really solve the problem for.
So what would be a good use case for AI?
Wow. Well,
I would start with data. So if you don't have data, I guess it's not a good use case.
yeah, if you don't have data, and you've got to start again with clean data, have you got access to the data? Is the data secured in terms of people talk about data and data encryption at rest and in motion? Those are standard, but we also talk about data in compute, so polymorphic encryption within the applications itself. So you're absolutely maximizing the privacy and security of your data, and you've got to secure that, and you've got to ensure that that data is also continually updated, refreshed and cleansed, and ensuring that you've got the right data pipelines and the AI pipelines in place to actually manage that.
So we're starting with the data. I guess it goes to some kind of a database or a cloud area, and then there are like guardrails all through the process of gathering the data, and moving the data, using the data, and the output is another kind of data that is created through them.
Right, and that's where governance comes in, right? So this is what you've got to have. Most enterprises have governance, but many enterprises don't have their AI governance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they're racing to market with something just to be in the market with saying that they're in AI. And many CEOs go, well, ChatGPT is my answer to AI. And they're like, well, ChatGPT is not your AI, right? That is generative AI. But going back to your question, what are good use cases? Well, automation, repeatable tasks. Anything that's repeatable, you can automate. So things like, areas around customer service, right? So enable, that is a great use case that works today. So companies that have hundreds of thousands of calls per month that they're using, humans to do can literally reduce that by half almost overnight by using AI. Not the number of calls, but the number of humans required, because you can now agentify those things. And you talk about data, we talk about agentifying that data, making that data live, right? How does that data live within your environment? So you're actually driving value and real outcomes from that data, from that you didn't realize you could have, right? So it's back to the old adage of, what you know, you don't know what you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you already know, right? So, and it's that latter one that's the really important part. Of you've already got the data, and suddenly you've got this incredible insight. My gosh, I can just save millions of dollars through operational efficiency. Now, operational efficiency is a great use case, but it's not the only use case. And you start getting into building brand loyalty, where you can start having personalized, hyper-personalized interactions with your customers now that are going to build up that brand loyalty. Even deeper, because they're now talking to me, Phillip Swan, as the individual, as to Phillip Swan, part of this cohort. Really, and that starts to get creepy. So you have to be really careful in how you manage that, so that it doesn't come across creepy. So you're going to start seeing whole industries being through AI, and some very, very old industries too, transportation, like railroads, dealing with regulations that go back to the 1800s, right? How do you deal with that? And hyper conservative, because you're dealing with human safety here,
right,
and public safety as a whole. So driving the right agentic use cases into there, and things that you could be looking at is like, well, how about we manage our timetabling system through agentic systems? So you're not actually, how do you actually increase the efficiencies through predictive maintenance? Because you've already got all the sensors on the railroad tracks. Why not pick up on those and actually use those to do, not just preventable maintenance, but predictable maintenance in advance of issues happening? Because small problems only become large problems. And that actually, therein lies the big problem with AI, is that if your data is not good with a small problem, that suddenly gets exacerbated and amplified to a great degree, which makes your AI untrustworthy. I cannot trust the results on the output, because it just takes one wrong answer and you go, ooh, that isn't right.
Yeah.
I know it's not right. I don't trust you anymore.
Yeah. You mentioned two things about the support. So the first one is what everybody knows. So instead of having like 20 people in your support team, you could use AI and have only, let's say, 5 or 10. The second thing that you mentioned about the support is that you could drive another level of understanding and derive understanding from the data that you don't have the capacity to do right now, because the data is not analyzed in that way. It's not like maybe transcribed and analyzed in a way that somebody could consume and have any kind of understanding from it, which is another layer that most companies, I think, are less aware of.
Right. You've got to be able to translate this into something that makes the human more efficient, because AI is not about, yes, you're talking about operational efficiencies. Yes, you've heard like the CEO of Anthropic saying last week that he thinks that 50% of entry-level jobs will be gone within 5 years.
Yeah.
That's quite possible and quite probable. But you still need humans in the loop, right? And when we talk about AI within our company, it's AI that's good for people and good for the planet. And what do we mean by that? We mean that it's augmenting the human, not replacing the human. So it's allowing, we all have our own superpowers. You have your superpower, Adi, I have my superpowers, but we all have to deal with stuff in our day that we go like, oh God, just have to get this done, right?
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that AI can do. It can offload all the stuff that you don't like to do, but you have to get done, so that you can focus on what you are passionate about. I am deeply passionate about product. I am deeply passionate about go-to-market. But my day is filled with all the random noise that everybody else's day is filled with, right? So how do I focus myself down? I focus myself down by automating as much as possible that I can, right? All of my content is mine. Right. I do that for one simple reason, because I want copyright. I want the company to have copyright on the content, right? You can't do that with AI, right? With Gen AI, you don't own copyright.
Yeah.
So things that are generative, where AI helps me personally is in my research. I've automated my research down to the point where I've got it to where it saves me over 80% of my time on my research on things now. So where I can absorb, I got it in such a way that I get the information from sources that I trust. And I use tools like Perplexity to help me with that. Perplexity is an absolutely awesome tool on this and shows transparency.
Yeah.
But that also gets back to the trust equation in the human environment, right? In the use cases, you've got to have humans trusting the system, trusting it's going to help them, trusting it's going to add value, and trusting you're going to have great outcomes at the end, right?
Yeah.
But don't forget one thing, the human brain still needs to think. We still need the human to be thinking, right? Because we can get lazy. And the minute we get lazy, we get into trouble.
Yeah. But you mentioned, we want it to be good for the planet and for humans, but we all understand that AI would, I don't know if it's 50%, I'm not the CEO of Anthropic too, but let's say it's going to be even 10, 20% at the beginning. What do you believe that people would do more, other than maybe some of them would utilize the AI tools and be this person, the human in the loop who would work with these tools? What would happen to the other people that were replaced by AI?
Crystal ball time. You're not going to be replaced by AI, but you are going to be replaced by somebody who's using it. And so you've got to learn how to use it. I have my whole household uses AI now.
Really?
The whole house.
Give me an example.
So a great example is like my wife runs a promotional merchandising business. She has switched to almost 100% AI in her whole workflows now, and going and taking her clients through ordering and doing all the ordering process. So she's automated all of that now. Yeah, I helped her with it, but she's used. And my son, his music business, is using AI to not to generate music, but to generate the configurations on all of his equipment. So to generate the sounds that he wants, right? He's an audio engineer. He's not using AI to, again, create content because that's his own. He is creating it. He's using it to really help him create better sounds and stuff like that. Anyway, it's all areas that can automate things that you found challenging in the past.
Yeah, but he gave me two examples of business owners or people who are self-employed, and that's one more thing. But if we're going back to companies and enterprise, let's say even this support person, let's say that at the beginning, instead of 20, you have 10. And then these 10 are working with AI. AI is, of course, learning. And then they would need only 5 and then 3, right? That's what's going to happen, because you're going to teach it so well, and the AI is going to learn so well that you would need less and less people within the company in order to have the same level of support,
That is
even
correct.
for more clients, not only for the current client amount of clients.
We don't hide the fact that we are a company that is born in AI, and everything we do in the company is leveraging AI first. I mean, we plan to be $1 billion in revenue with 100 people, right? That first $1 billion company with one person within 5 years is going to be a very real thing.
Yeah, this is what Sam Altman is saying, that you would have a 1% unicorn within, a few years.
Correct.
That's
I do
what
believe that. And I do believe that. And it's going to be platforms like ours with the Iridius Solution Factory that's going to enable that, because we bring the safety with privacy, the security, and everything in play to building your AI solutions. So building those in days versus months is the core crux of our value proposition. And that trust. So everything we have observability, we have monitoring, we have transparency, all built into the product, so that it gives you that, how the AI is behaving. We eliminate that 95% of hallucination, because hallucination is all about context. And so we bring all of the context together to do that. And that helps significantly with the trust. Hallucination is real.
Yeah. So if you're going back to your platform, it's like it's a modules or agents or different solutions that together you could orchestrate the workflow or like solutions within the company that should go through the layer of your product in order to allow more trust, compliance, security, right?
So what our product does is allows our customers to author their agentic systems with compliance and regulatory and governance already built in at authoring time, all the way through to build, and then user acceptance testing is still going to be compliant, and you have all the humans in the loop. So your chief compliance officer, risk officers can start looking at all of the output to ensure that this is operating. But most importantly, it's not a checklist. It's actually because with typical compliance, it's like, do you do XYZ? Check, yes, I do that. Well, great, you do that. It doesn't actually verify that you're actually doing it. And so we have that functionality all built in, so that when you're actually executing the workload in the cloud, that it's operating with all the compliance in real time, literally as the code is running. So you know before it goes out into the market that you're already running a compliant solution. And that builds trust in of itself. These regulatory is there for a reason. It's there to provide you the guardrails, the safety, right?
Yeah.
And too much regulation is bad, but we do need some.
Yeah, but there is like two things. One is the regulations themselves that could be created, like a set of rules or authorizations or guidelines that could be built. And of course, they need to be updated in order to fit the AI realm. That's one thing. But the second thing is the AI solutions themselves that is used. It could be an LLM or a third party that is different, or my own model, or any other solution that is using AI. And these black boxes could not be really monitored, or
right.
You cannot do anything with it, right, if you're using these kinds of solutions. And they're surely not as secure as they could be because they're new. And it's like the other side of the equation, which is the people who are trying to do all these vulnerabilities are working right now. So it's like it's not there yet, right?
No,
so
it's not there. So we're model agnostic. So we don't care what model it is, whether it's a foundational model or a customer's own model. We have, yes, so we pick the right model for the right situation, for the right use case and the right situation. So if you're using for code generation, you maybe use GPT 4.1 today or whatever else is going down the line. But when it comes to these models, you're absolutely right in that you cannot rely on them for security. You cannot, because they're opaque, right? You don't know how these models are making decisions, right?
Yeah, nobody knows. It's not that you don't know. Sam Altman doesn't know. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. So the best that you can do is give it as much context as possible so that you're minimizing your exposure to hallucination. And then when you're doing that, you're able to show the transparency as to how each agent is operating, what environment they're operating in, what parts of the world they're operating in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You see absolutely everything. So now you have the manageability. So if something starts acting rogue, you can shut it down before it causes any damage. Because part of the problem with autonomy is that if you don't have the controls in place, you're in trouble. You're asking for trouble.
I think it's more than the controls. The controls are like the next level. The first level is like the transparency, the monitoring of availability. Right now, you don't really know. Maybe some of your clients are getting misleading answers, or you don't really know all the time what's going on, and you don't have a really good way to manage that and then control it in a way. Because all these solutions are new. They're new. It's like 2 years old, 3 years old, 2.5, I would say. And we don't know yet what could be done. And same goes for the vulnerabilities or the security. I know.
So one thing you haven't
think about security. You don't know even what you should consider.
Yeah, the one thing you haven't spoken about there is what is each agent entitled to do. They're called entitlements for a reason. All right. And so if it's an agent for me as Chief Product Officer, Chief Go-to-Market Officer, Iridius, that's one set of privileges. Whereas if I am somebody in a larger enterprise with lower security needs, now we're talking about, I don't want to be able to, you can't have this person see the CEO's salary or income, right? That, by the way, has happened. Those bad use cases have happened.
Sure.
And so so the entitlements are a key component of there. And the other key component is behaviors. How do they behave, right? So it's more than just entitlements. Do they behave to the corporate culture, right? Just as an employee, you've got to train these AI agents to be like virtual employees, just like you would onboard a new employee. You've got a code of ethics. You've got a code of conduct. You've got all of the behaviors you are expecting have to be encoded and enforced within any autonomous system, because otherwise you're going to run rogue real fast.
So what you're saying, let's say you're deploying a new agent in the company. It's not only the fact that you teach or upload the code of conduct and tell him this is how we behave as an employee. It's more than that. You have the guardrails and you have the capacity to make sure that it doesn't do things that are considered wrong in the company.
Correct. That's exactly correct. So, yeah, it's a very complex situation, and one in which we can get ourselves into a lot of trouble really quickly without companies like us, protecting with the guardrails.
So give me an example. You just mentioned one that one of the employees got to the information about the salaries or the salary of CEO. So you've seen enterprise gamble with AI security. So could you give us like an example of that?
An example of a successful one, or example of
what would happen if somebody would not deploy all these like compliance, security, transparency?
What could happen is that you'll take a manufacturing company. Mm-hmm. They're operating equipment that can easily remove where people can die, where it's an environment, where it's a shop floor where people can die, where people can have an instance, right? So having an AI that's able to interface with all the security systems to be able to ensure and predict that I've just seen somebody walk into this corner, they should have only been there for like 30 seconds. It's now 45 seconds. Alert. there's a chance that somebody's been injured or killed. So you can start alerting security to go into that area to go and check on that person's well-being, right? As an example. These are very good use cases for AI. That ties in computer vision, that ties in safety with, like in the States, we have OSHA, which is occupational safety in the workplace, really enforcing some of these capabilities right into the customer's environment. And what could go rogue in that situation is like if you're capturing somebody's face, if you're releasing private information about that person. So ensuring that you've got all of the safeguards in place, that you're protecting that person's privacy is absolutely critical. And you could just imagine now video feeds going out into the wild that are showing somebody having a limb chopped off on the factory floor. That is a worst case scenario. I'm not saying it's happened. It hasn't, that to my knowledge, but these are the kinds of things that could happen without the guardrails.
What kind of, I could imagine that the deployment of your solution would be I don't know if long, but it takes time to integrate the solution into the company. And as you mentioned, you need to train them and to make sure that it's aligned with the way that they work,
right,
with the way that they operate. So it's not like a plug and play thing. You need to really go into the company and build a customized or a personalized solution for them.
It's building the solution, but it's also the change management aspect, right? How do you get it adopted? And adoption comes through trust, right? And trust, as rapidly as innovation is intended to happen, trust can destroy innovation like that, or lack of trust, because it moves so quickly in either direction. And so it's really important that you have the change management part of any part, and that's something that we take very, very seriously within the company.
Okay. And looking ahead, what's the one thing about AI that most people are still getting wrong?
Picking the wrong use case.
They think that it's like one solution fits all. And
not just one solution fits all. They think well, AI could solve this. They pick the wrong use case, and before they rush to the use case before driving the foundational data, the data authority, the data integrity, the data pipelines, everything around their data is secured. It's accurate, because AI doesn't operate without good data. Good AI means you've got good data. And so focus on the data first, and then
I see. And what's your number one tip for leaders today?
My number one tip is experiment, learn, test, try it, fail at it quickly, right? So don't go into these $1 million plus your proofs of concept before you have to prototype things. Is this actually a solution that you want? Is this a solution that your customers need, whether they're internal or not? But test it. Just get out there and try.
Yeah. So we're almost done. Where could people hear more about Iridius and about you and contact you? So
a couple of ways. So first of all, we do have our own podcast. It's called the Agentic Insider, and that's at agenticinsider.show. I'm on LinkedIn, and it's Phillip with 2 L's -Swan. Feel free to DM me. I respond to all my direct messages. And Iridius, check us out. It's Iridius, IRIDIUS.ai, and we're super excited about what we're coming to market with.
Wow. Thank you, Phillip. It's been very insightful, and I learned a lot. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Adi. Pleasure being on.
Yeah, and to all of you changemakers out there, thank you for joining us. And I'll see you next week with another innovative, insightful talk. See you.
Bye.